in collaboration with Horus Heresy legions, to commemorate their new expansion, Galaxy in Flames. It is a time of legend. The galaxy is in flames. The Emperor's glorious vision for humanity is in ruins. His favored son, Horus, has turned from his father's light and embraced chaos. His armies, the mighty and redoubtable Space Marines, are locked in a brutal civil war. Once these ultimate warriors fought side by side as brothers, protecting the galaxy and bringing mankind back into the Emperor's light. Now they are divided. Some remain loyal to the Emperor, while others have sided with the War Master. Preeminent amongst them, the leaders of their 1,000-strong legions, are the Primarchs, magnificent superhuman beings. They are the crowning achievement of the Emperor's genetic science. Thrust into battle against one another, victory is uncertain for either side. Worlds are burning. At Istvan V, Horus dealt a vicious blow, and 3 loyal legions were all but destroyed. War was begun. A conflict that will engulf all of mankind in fire. Treachery and betrayal have usurped honor and nobility. Assassins lurk in every shadow. Armies are gathering. All must choose a side or die. Horus musters his armada, terror itself the object of his wrath. Seated upon the golden throne, the Emperor waits for his wayward son to return. But his true enemy is chaos, a primordial force that seeks to enslave mankind to its capricious whims. The screams of the innocent, the pleas of the righteous resound to the cruel laughter of dark gods. Suffering and damnation await all should the Emperor fail and the war be lost. The age of knowledge and enlightenment has ended. The age of darkness has begun. The spear tip. Where will it strike? Where? I now wonder if this is when it would happen. If I were normal. If I were a mortal. If I were a mere man. Is this when it would happen? I cannot tell. I have read of it, have discussed it, have heard it and smelt it, have witnessed it. Conjecturally, I know what it is, what it does, its origins, and its reason for existing. But I have not experienced it since I was chosen and raised up, and that was some 100 years or more ago now. I cannot actually remember it, though, as if the training, the conditioning, the changes, all of it conspired to not only remove it, but to scrape it from my history, wiped it from my memory as it had my emotional spectrum. I know everything there is to know about it, how to invoke it, how to use it, how to dissipate it. Yet I cannot experience it. Fear. We do not feel fear, any of us. Now we are able to calculate threats and have a healthy eros urge, a drive for a continuation of our lives. But we do not feel fear. I wonder if that means we are not really human anymore. But sophistry and contemplation I leave to my chaplain, to remembrances, and to my Primarch. I have no need of it right now. For in this war, there are no greys, no edges, no cut and thrust, no perspectives. This is order versus chaos. This is good against evil. And I do not care which side claims which ribbon. I am Astartes, I am his angel of death. His angel. The Emperor's. And I do not even care if he is in the right. I swore an oath, and I will never gainsay it. Not so our opposite numbers. The bile rises in the back of my throat. No, it actually does. I feel it sting, and my eyes involuntarily begin to moisten a tad before I hawk and spit. It is the thought of it, still so alien to my mind, such an affront to my sensibilities. I react on such a visceral level. I feel my body is almost more repulsed than my mind. For I still cannot believe it. None of us can. Marine fighting Marine. Brother slaying brother. The very Primarchs at war. Sometimes, despite everything that has happened, I still daydream that we are all informed. This was but a drill. A war game that was fought as only an Astartes or Primarch can. For keeps. But that it was all over now. The ruse ended, the conflict a sham. The world would return to normal. It would all be back the way it should be. The Emperor would be universally loved and obeyed. The War Master, his most loyal and trusted son, his right hand again. And Horus, Lupercal and he would make great stock of it all, as ever they did. I imagined them meeting on the open plains of Alinor, perhaps. But wherever chosen, it would hold huge provenance, massive symbolism to both sides. And their armies would be arrayed and readied. Many of the men on both sides would be baying for the word to strike. But then the Emperor and his favoured son would walk from their armies, would stride forth as the Titans they are. They alone would meet. All would hold their breaths. The first moments would be tense. Every single voyeur would make a tiny lean into their stance, gripping the stock of their bolter just a bit too tight, fingers barely hovering over the triggers. And then it would happen. On different days I have different orders of events, different ideas, but the result is always the same. This time, Horus throws away his mace and strides forward, then goes to kneel at the Emperor's feet. But his father catches him as he begins, and raises him up in a full and hearty embrace. We all cheer, on both sides, for we know it is over. All is right in the world again. It is over. The flashing of the comms, the chevrons of their fleet finally reaching deployment range. My mind returns to the events of the moment with a shock. For a second I am saddened again, for it comes crashing back to me. Again. All of it. The War Master has turned on his own sire. He has turned traitor. He has half of his brothers and their Marines with him, and he is destroying anyone or anything that stands in his way. And we are in his way. Where would the spear tip fall? Where? I think I should be experiencing it now, right at this moment. Fear. It is illogical and challenging to be aware of this lack. For I know this will not go well. I am Astartes High, a gene-enhanced warrior of the Emperor. I have read the Principia Bellicosa, memorized it. Have fought alongside those who now come to destroy me and my men. I know what they will do, yet I may still be unable to stop them. For they are the 16th Legion, they are the Sons of Juarez, and they have never known lasting defeat. And this is their wheelhouse, their speciality, what they were formed to do, the rapid assault. They will hit us like a spear, the tip being the very first units to arrive, the ones who will attempt to smash all before them and create a space and breathing time for the rest of the blade to land and deploy. Then a shaft will appear, A steady surge of men, armor, and ordnance that will then expand out to take this planet in the name of the War Master. And they will keep coming if we cannot stop the tip. They will never stop. Our only hope, to smash the spear tip, to make sure they gain no foothold whatsoever. So the endlessly repeated question that resounds around my skull. Where will it fall? Where will they strike? Our void shields stand under constant fire that now rains down on us from above. But they cannot last forever. This is a concerted effort of a battle fleet of the Crusade. It is only a matter of time. The plains outside of the hive are laid waste, just from the splash from our shields. The few rounds and charges and blasts that are not quite in the perfect angle due to not harmonizing with the rotation of the planet perfectly yet. Where? Our massive banks of defense lasers fire into the void. I see that we have kissed some of the enemy hard enough for them to begin to rotate their line, to jockey into shifting positions, so no one ship's shields are overwhelmed and its armor melted before it is replaced by another fresh vessel. Damn them. They are so efficient. It is like a demonstration. We, the test subjects. They cease their volleys within minutes of the last shield flickering. We are defenseless. But they do not wish to ruin the entirety of this particular world, especially not this facility. They know why we hold it. We know why they are here. The lines are drawn. Reports now flicker across the comms. There are trails in the skies. Already. So damn efficient. It is said that the 16th are the finest of all Marines. But even if they are not, it is inarguable that they have no equal in the shock assault. They are the finest humanity has ever produced. Its best and brightest, most ruthless and powerful shock troops. Ever. Chevrons kick into action as our defensive fire covers the skies with tracers and hard shrapnel. We rip more than you might expect out of the air, but on they come. And this is just the spear tip. Hundreds of drop pods in 3 clusters. Other things cover the skies behind them, but ECM, chaff, and datagen protect them from identification as they approach. But then I make them out. Damn. They fill the skies, but fly like comets towards their targets. It can only be one formation. It is the Catulan Reavers. It is their first company. Of the best legion in all of humanity, in all of time, these are the greatest warriors. And when they fly the skies, the Justarian must soon follow, or proceed. The drop pods that make it past our webs of fire hit hard, smashing all on their way down. But when they strike, their wings are burst off and fall down to reveal only automated fire platforms. They target the defensive lasers and flak and rip into them, radically reducing the price the rest of the landing will pay. It is a distraction. Which means this is the rest of the spear, and the second wave fast approaching. The spear tip has already struck. Where? I bark orders to the Magos and my underlings. We search, and one turns and waves at me. I take command of his console and his screen reveals all. They use teleportarum technology. Tactical dreadnought armor is now sweeping through the corridors of the levels above. They are inside the walls. The Justarian are inside the walls. We are all dead. I order all blast doors to be lowered and cut off. We will delay them at least. Give the rest of the field officers a chance to do what is required. Because we now have no external comms. They march down corridors with entire squads of tactical dreadnought armor, smashing down walls and doors, gunning down or gutting all with the surgical, methodical, relentless butchery. They are unmatched. It is almost an honor to watch them ply their trade. if it were not for who they were performing this exhibition on. My own brothers. Our bolters did not pierce the Terminator armor. Not nearly enough. We had barely received our first shipments, and none but our own elite had warned them. Now we found we could not outmaneuver them, could not outflank them, so we could not defeat them. The odd special weapon would be attempted, but the first snap of a Volkite weapon and all of their fire was drawn. None who did this even lasted seconds. And while this was happening, the most experienced, most skilled, and most ferocious assault units of the Crusade descended on us. The other half of the first company of the 16th, the Sons of Juarez, the Cachulan Reavers. Wielding weapons of worth, both ranged and melee, their artificer armor making them nearly as proof to our shots as the tactical dreadnought armor. The Reavers were the epitome of swift surgical slaughter. I'd faced off against the 12th, the World Eaters. Their rage was as much a weakness as a strength. But here, in the Cachulan Reavers, was the ultimate expression of the assault marine. The best of the best. And they tore through my battle line brothers like they were novices. Even the sergeants. They seemed to be able to toy with, but then did what they did best, and killed. Every one of them was a hero of their legion, a living legend. And although we were Astartes, we were Marines. We were not in the same league. And both they and we now knew it. To their eternal glory, my men did not bend, did not break. They gave as good as they could. But the Reavers were breathtaking. When I watched them on the screens, I was almost transported away from the fact that it was my own men they killed. Almost forgot that the senior force, the Justarian, invariably led by Ezekiel, were only moments away. And in that last few minutes, I knew. I just knew. I still did not experience that long-gone emotion. I could not feel fear. But I could experience loss. And I did. For in those screens, at the hands of those brothers of ours that we were once so proud, the Cachulan and the Justarian, the elite of Horus, the War Master, I saw it. The end of all things. My emperor's head on a pike, the crest of the Lupercal above the palace. I could see it as clearly as ever I saw them embrace. We are going to lose. Not just here, not just my death, but everywhere. And then, everyone. Nothing could stop them. Nothing. I hear the scraping of claws on metal, the frantic pace of the digging at the door. Ezekiel is here. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the treachery, horror, and despair of the Warhammer 30k universe, when the age of knowledge and enlightenment has ended, and the age of darkness has begun, the terrible era of the Horus Heresy. Now, I have always maintained that I do not cover this period due to not having read enough of the run to feel informed, but I find that these days I have the reading speed of a tortoise on Prozac, and never enough time due to content creation and family commitments. So it was either going to be never, or to do as I have done with the initial guides, to attempt to provide a brief snapshot, a tiny taste of the period, as an inducement for the gentle listener to then perform their own exploration of the expansive and rich lore. I will never claim to be an expert on anything. Just an entertainer, just an introducer, just a guide. So if you find errors in any portrayal in this period, feel free to inform me of your perspective, but do this in the spirit of informing me of something I may not be aware of, or potentially left out. Not out of malice, but potentially out of ignorance. At their best, my videos are as up-to-date as they can be, and as accurate. But Warhammer is a labyrinth. So if I do not know the alleyways you have walked, then you can be assured you do not know some that others have traversed, myself included. But yes, there will be some extensive leaning on that old existing wisdom, I can tell you. Mainly because I am not confident. But I thought you might enjoy it, and I can only get better with practice, I hope. And prioritizing reading, sorry. So let us explore this period together, this age of darkness. Now, the defensive wobble over, let us see what treasures are in store in this era. Let it also be known that the thing that tipped my hand was the endorsement from Horus Heresy Legions, the sponsor of this video. I was an avid player before I became a floating skull. Now I just dabble, but still enjoy. But when they threw down the gauntlet, I felt I should at least give this luxuriously embellished and vibrant period a go. See if I can expand a little. So do check out the links in the description, because you can play Horus Heresy Legions on mobile, iOS, etc. All the handheld thingies, phony things, but also on Steam. So on your PC, which is très cool. And every last thing in this video, my first foray into the Age of Darkness, every last topic, is being released in the newest update, Galaxy in Flames. So I'm rather chuffed to be a part of it. Now, go start the download. It's easy and fun. And today, we shall be exploring 3 strains in the one entry, but they may not be as eclectic as they might first appear. For we have already had an introductory tale about the Sons of Juarez, and will go into a tiny bit more detail on those units and the one face amongst the Sons of Juarez that is in the expansion, a man of note. Then we will progress to a warrior and unique unit of the World Eaters that is era-specific. Captain Dragar, then the Rampager squads, and their Kadir weapons. We will then progress to a first of their kind in so many brackets. We will be discussing Kaifa Morark and Ignatius Grolgo, and how the Death Guard fell to chaos. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, "For the warrior, the only crime is cowardice." Primarch Horus Lupercal. The Justarian were one of 2 distinct subformations within the elite First Company of the Lunar Wolves, the later renamed Sons of Juarez Legion, led by the Legion's First Company, Ezekiel Abaddon. Sidebar, yes, that Ezekiel Abaddon, of Black Crusade fame. The Justarian were the pride of the 16th Legion, sporting their signature black armor, which denoted their specialization in harrowing actions, shock assaults, and strategic decapitation strikes. Tasked with forming the point of the spear for the 16th Legion, they went where the fighting was thickest, their attack directed usually at destroying the heart of an opposing target, or conducting the decapitation strike of an enemy force. Early proponents of the use of tactical dreadnought armor, many Justarian entered combat as Terminators, relying on the resilience this gave them to smash aside any resistance and close in for the kill. The Catchelan Reavers. The Catchelan Reaver assault squads were one of the 2 distinct sub-formations of the elite First Company of the Sons of Juarez Legion. Like their Justarian Terminator squad contemporaries in the rest of the First Company, they too sported the signature black armor, which denoted their specialization in harrowing actions and hit-and-run tactics. They were led by an officer with the unusual rank of captain, under the overall command of the Legion's First Captain Ezekiel Abaddon, who was also the overall commander of the First Company, as well as the battle leader of the Justarian squads. The Catchelan Reavers also made extensive use of Terminator armor, taking advantage of its additional protection and potent weaponry to hammer any opposition. Though as elite assault squads, they often made use of jump packs and melee weapons to soften up the foe for their Justarian counterparts to later demolish. Used in combination, these 2 elite formations of the Sons of Horus First Company exemplified the Primarch Horus's predilection for precise and overwhelming attacks against strategic targets. Heavily influenced by the tactics of the seething and incessant tribal warfare of Cathonia, Reaver units specialized in lightning-swift assaults, which maimed and disabled a foe, striking down their leaders, mercilessly cutting down any who were weak or isolated, and sowing panic and disorder in any who remained. Vicious and adaptable, the Reaver squads could fight equally well in multiple theatres of warfare, from void boarding actions to battlefield shock assaults to hit-and-run raids and scouring operations. Each Reaver unit, whether a single squad or an entire company in strength, was effectively a warband in its own right, and its warriors fought more as individuals than regimented soldiers. Idiosyncratic both in appearance and war gear, each unit strove to make its own name and reputation. Of these squads, the Catulan Reavers were the most infamous during the early battles of the Horus Heresy, and were active at both Istvan III and Istvan V. But there were many more. As the war progressed, the Reaver patterns of tactical organization became more commonplace in the Sons of Horus, displacing more regimented formations as new units were formed. Accordingly, they were favored with the finest arms and war gear that Horus could provide. Sidebar: concerning warrior lodges. The Age of Darkness is unlike that of the grim darkness of the far future in many, many ways. But one of the most tragic elements of this period is its sheer naivety. The God Emperor of mankind had risen on Terra and had formed a new regime, a new order, and a new army to enforce his will. He had sent this army out on his great crusade, as we have heard. But despite all of the horrors that the warriors of the Imperium faced, be they psychers of godlike prowess, Xenos who can kill with a look and had vicious weapons of mass destruction, or independent human civilization that would not bend the knee to the Imperium and its truth, they were always united. The Primarchs led the legions, and all of them followed first the Emperor and then the War Master Horus. The suffocating ignorance, religious zealotry and horrors of the 41st millennium were gifts of the future. In the Age of Darkness, they went into it as if on the verge of total victory. Much of the Imperium was far better than it had been before they had met the Imperium, as was the proclaimed goal of the Emperor and his greatest sons, Horus, Sanguinius, Vulcan Dawn, Guilliman, and Russ. Most agreed with this, of course, but Horus epitomized the philosopher king. But it meant that all of the threats the Crusade had faced were external. Oh, there would always be rebel officials or generals left on planets who became egotistical and attempted to secede from the Imperium. But the legions of Marines trusted one another. There were bitter rivalries, as there always are with high-octane, high-performance units of fighting men, but there was not even the dream of any of them turning on one another. It was during this open period where the rot began. For the Sons of Lorgar, the Word-Bearers, had fallen to chaos, and they sent their greatest vipers to bring the poison to the very veins of the Sons of Horus. They had always been chaos worshippers on Colchis, the homeworld of the Word-Bearers. Lorgar, their Primarch, turned his face from the Emperor, who had soundly rejected Lorgar's worship, and scolded him like a child in front of not only his own legion, but also in front of Guilliman and the representatives of his Ultramarines. So Lorgar found the Dark Guards, beings who would accept his faith and devotion, and through the most innocuous of practices, the warrior lodges, they spread their twisted ideology across the forces of the Astartes. They concentrated on the Sons of Horus, of course. For the lodges seemed to be harmless. They were merely gathering places for groups of Marines where the formality of rank could be ignored, and the captain could rub shoulders with the battle-line Marine as men. But this was soon followed by seemingly harmless rituals, sayings, feasts, and the like. The road to hell is not clear and signposted, so each little nudge seemed so small a step. And before they knew it, the tendrils of the Chaos Gods were inside the very command structure of the Marines. And soon enough, those Marines were often more loyal to their lodge than to their direct officers. This is how the rot was passed from one expedition fleet to the next, like a plague. Sadly, even Fulgrim and his Emperor's children were infected by the Sons of Horus. The greatest fall of them all was then set on its sad track, the utter destruction of the best legion in all of the Crusade. But that is for another day. All because the Emperor did not tell them He did not warn his sons or their legions, for the enemy was subtle. So they were sleepwalked into their fall by the warrior lodges, never even aware that their greatest threat, their true enemy, that defined the Great Crusade, was in fact one they had never seen. It was the dark gods of chaos. End of sidebar. And now let us discuss the Sons of Horus hero that is in the new expansion Galaxy in Flames, Tybalt Mar. Not that Tybalt from Shakespeare, okay? Just so we all know. To quote, Tybalt Mar, known as the Either, was the captain of the Sons of Horus 18th Company during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. He was often seen alongside 19th Company Captain Verulam Moy, also known as the Oar. Both were Sons of Horus, the term for those Lunar Wolves Marines who looked facially similar to their Primarch Horus. While their similarity in appearance to Horus was notable, the similarity between each other was so striking that they were considered almost twins by their fellows. This carried on into their respective nicknames, the Either and the Oar, due to the belief that they were so hard to tell apart they may as well be interchangeable. Tybalt Mar was referred to as the Either, while Verulam Moy was called the Oar. In fact, Moy and Mar worked so well together that it was habit, circumstances permitting, for their companies to be sent into battle alongside each other. This was not always possible due to the wolves' practice of drawing lots to see which companies would go on missions when a smaller force than the total present was required. Two such occasions were the initial combat drop on Murder, where Moy won a place and Mar did not, and again on the mission to the moon of Davin, where Moy led the force's devastator contingent. Following the death of Moy on Davin's moon, Mar was considerably affected by the death of his friend and comrade. After visiting the scene of Moy's death in the aftermath of the battle, he became withdrawn and reclusive. A long-time holdout, he eventually joined the Warrior Lodge within the Legion, on the eve of the Horus Heresy, being induced by the War Master himself. During the Horus Heresy, Tybalt Mar fought at Estevan V, and later defeated the royalist Shadrach Meduson in the Battle of Arasak, after which he persuaded Horus that the Shattered Legions were a serious enough threat to merit a forceful response from the Sons of Horus. The War Master granted Mar command of a task force with a mandate to eliminate this threat to his rear. A bitter cat-and-mouse game quickly developed between Mar and Meduson, which culminated in the Battle of Aragna Chain, where Mar was able to finally capture and execute the Iron Hand aboard his flagship, Lupercal Pursuivant. Later in the Siege of Terra, Mar was part of the Mournival-led assault underneath the Saturnine Gate. His squad was ambushed by a kill team led by Garviel Loken himself, and quickly annihilated. Mar was shocked to see Loken still alive. And Garvey, L, is definitely someone we shall discuss in the future. Some say the true hero of the entire Age of Darkness, but we shall explore that claim together one day. Now, let us move to the 12th, the Sons of the Red Angel, the World Eaters. To quote, Dragar was a member of the World Eaters Space Marine Legion during the Great Crusade, Horus Heresy, and post-Heresy era. Ranked as captain during these periods, he is chiefly notable for being indirectly responsible for the renaming of the Warhounds Legion as the World Eaters. Dragar first appears in historical records during the confused reports of the events that took place around the discovery of the Primarch Angron. In the record that features Dragar, it is said that Angron, upon being placed into the care of his genetic sons, the Emperor's Warhounds Legion, became murderously violent when the officers of the Legion attempted to speak to him. As the Warhound officers attempted to speak to Angron in order of seniority, it was not long before the ranking officer was but the 8th Captain, Khan. Dragar, ranking beneath Khan, urged the 8th Captain not to attempt to speak to the Primarch in turn, as the others had done. He and Horst, commander of the 9th Company, Stormbird Squadron, hesitantly pointed out that if the situation with Angron could not be resolved, someone, would need to be left to command the Legion, and that someone, the implication went, should be Khan. Khan dismissed their concerns and went into his fateful meeting with the Primarch. Dragar was present when Khan emerged, not only alive, but with Angron in tow, ready and willing to assume command of his Legion. When Khan finished introducing Angron to his officers with the phrase, "Salute the one whose soldiers were named the Eaters of Cities," Dragar's response would result in an unforeseen occurrence. "Primarch, General, your warriors were Eaters of Cities. Lord, with you to command us, the Warhounds will be Eaters of Worlds." World Eaters. World Eaters. "So you shall be then, little brothers. Come with me, then, World Eaters." Captain Dragar of the Warhounds Legion, and Angron, their Primarch. End quote. Now it must be known that Dragar did not end his story in the Age of Darkness. He was at the Siege of Terra all right, and played a fundamental role in the times afterwards, during the Scouring and the Battle of Scalanthrax, but that is beyond the scope of this entry. And now to one of the specialist units of the World Eaters that is also included in the update, the Rampager Squads. To quote, following the reunification with their lost Primarch, Angron, upon the world of Nuceria, the bloody-handed Primarch enacted many changes within the structure of the 12th Legion. Knowing how successful his own cortical implants were at boosting a warrior's prowess in battle, Angron ordered his apothecarian to insert the Butcher's Nails implants within every Astartes of the World Eaters Legion, to enhance their aggression and pain tolerance far beyond that which even the gene-engineered flesh of a member of the Space Marines Legion was capable. Initially, this posed difficulties, as Angron's implants were relics of a long-lost technology, little understood even by their makers, while removing them from Angron for close study would have proven fatal to the Primarch. The Legion's Tech Marines and Apothecarians attempted to duplicate the process using the Primarch's own implants as templates to reverse engineer the devices. Early attempts to duplicate these implants were far from successful, and resulted in high rates of mortality and an irrevocable homicidal frenzy on test recruits. However, as time progressed, a viable form of the cortical implant technology was replicated and steadily improved, although it was never fully stable or its effects constant between subjects. And entire new formed companies of World Eater neophytes were implanted, as well as large numbers of existing World Eaters Astartes who volunteered for the dangerous operation. The majority of these Astartes were absorbed back into the 12th Legion line units, while those deemed perhaps too unstable for such tasks joined a growing number of near-berserker assault units known as Rampager Squads. The pain engine implanted in the skulls of these World Eaters forced them to enjoy killing above everything else. Even the comfort of brotherhood paled, one of life's few remaining pleasures for the World Eaters outside of battle. Other World Eaters focused their desire for berserk slaughter into martial discipline, mastering a variety of macabre and savage weapons, patterned from those used by Angron's fellow arena gladiators, and found on the feral worlds from which the 12th Legion primarily drew its recruits during the Great Crusade. Even within these units, those too far gone to be anything but restrained as savages between battles became known as the Kadir, or the Butchers, a frightening portent of what was soon to come for the entirety of the 12th Legion. Kadir weapons. The Meteor Hammer. This ancient weapon consists at its most basic level of one heavy, spiked weight connected by a chain. It belongs to the broader class of flail and chain weapons. A primary advantage for using a Meteor Hammer is its sheer speed. Using a Meteor Hammer involves swinging it around the body to build up considerable speed, before releasing the meteor to strike at any angle. The larger weighted head can be used offensively as well as defense, allowing its wielder to parry attacks or ensnaring an opponent's weapon to disarm them. When used by a skilled fighter, its speed, accuracy, and unpredictability make it a difficult weapon to defend against. Excoriator Chainsword. Always a favoured weapon of the World Eaters, This variant chain axe is an obscenely large double-handed chain weapon. Huge in size and weight, only the strongest warriors are able to brandish this weapon. The chassis houses a mounted chain assembly of ancient Nucerian design, making it a much more powerful pattern of chain axe than the average model. In addition, the weapon draws upon the mechanical support provided by Legionaries' power armor to drive this massive chain axe's bulk at greater speeds. Also, its longer haft is designed to be swung in wide swathes. Such is the power of this fearsome weapon that little can stand against it, and enemies fall apart like kindling when struck. The excoriated chain axe is fully capable of bisecting even an armored space marine in a single stroke of its gargantuan axe head. It can also slice through walls and even damage light armored vehicles. Twin Falx blades. This deadly weapon takes the form of a medium-sized sword, whose curved blade is extremely sharp on the inside edge. A one-handed weapon, these blades are always wielded in pairs. The blades are sharpened only on the inside, making it devastatingly effective in close-quarters melee combat. The length of the Falx allows it to be wielded with great force, the point piercing an enemy's helmet and the blade splitting shields. Wielded by a skilled warrior, it is said these formidable weapons are capable of splitting a shield in two at a single blow. The Barbed hooked Lash. This ancient Nucerian gladiatorial weapon is very similar to the meteor hammer, falling into the broader classes of flail or chain weapons. This weapon consists of a large mounted spear-like head with a pair of deadly barbed hooks that curves towards the wielder, attached to a long chain. End quote. And now we come to the two entries for the Death Guard. Both men, or were so. To quote, Kaifer Morarg. Kaifer Morarg was a member of the Death Guard during the Great Crusade in Horus Heresy. Morarg was one of the original humans of Barbarous who fought with Mortarion against the Overlords. A member of the 24th Breacher Squad, Morarg eventually rose to become Mortarion's personal equerry. Morarg was among those corrupted by the Destroyer Plague inside the warp after the first Captain Typhon slew the fleet's navigators and led the Death Guard into a trap. By the Siege of Terra, Morarg was one of the three key Legion commanders alongside Typhus and Glemus Calgaro. He was one of the few remaining Death Guard left with a degree of suspicion towards their new gifts, though he still was fiercely loyal to his Primarch. During the White Scar's attack on the Lion's Gate spaceport, Morarg was confronted by a demon known as the Remnant, which revealed to him that Mortarion had deliberately allowed his legion to fall to chaos. After the battle and banishing of Mortarion into the warp at the hands of Yagatai Khan, Morarg reappeared to rally the Death Guard under Typhus and Zadal Crozius. Though hating himself and what he had become, Morarg accepted Nurgle's gifts and continued to serve. Sidebar. Concerning the corruption of the Death Guard. Mortarion was the Primarch for the Death Guard, and had a deep hatred of magic, mysticism, psychers, and creatures of the warp. It is strange to think of him turning to a Chaos God. But it all depends on the context, you see. Criminally briefly, the Death Guard went into the warp, but Captain Typhon had managed to slaughter the Navis Nobilitae, the Navigators. Hence they could not traverse the warp. They did not know where they were. Typhon believed the Lords of Chaos had matters in hand, and would guide them to their intended destination. And so they did. As the Geller fields were not working at full power, there were chinks in the armor, and the Grandfather Nurgle infested the fleet. His men slowly being tortured to death by agonizing afflictions. Mortarion broke, and, it is believed, for his legion, for his sons. He damned their very souls. He bent the knee to mighty Nurgle, and forever after the Death Guard were bonded to his service. But it was later that his most blatant manifestation of their favor was to come. We shall discuss that in a moment, for it involves the second character for the Death Guard. Ignatius Grolgo. Ignatius Grolgo was originally the commander of the Death Guard Legion's Second Great Company during the last days of the Great Crusade and the First Battle of the Horus Heresy in the early 31st millennium. He chose to follow Horus, his traitorous Primarch Mortarion, and First Captain Typhon's decision to serve Chaos and overthrow the Emperor of Mankind, installing Horus as the true Emperor to rule over the Imperium of Man. Commander Grolgo was slain during the flight of the Imperial frigate Eisenstein from the Battle of Istvan III by his longtime rival, Battle Captain Nathaniel Garrow. End quote. But this brief extract does no justice to this very important Marine in the chronology of the servants of the Grandfather. For Grolgo was of Barbarous, and one of the men that witnessed the original rise of Mortarion, how he resisted then destroyed the foul Xenos that had fed on humanity for centuries. He fought across the stars with him as a newly changed Astartes and a member of the 14th Legion, the Dusk Raiders, now redubbed the Death Guard. His loyalty to his First Lord, Mortarion, would ever be truer than the lip service he paid to the distant figure of the Emperor of Mankind. He rose to a position of rank despite his eternally gruff and sharp attitude and mouth, and his detestation of the old ways of the Terran Marines of the Death Guard brought him into direct confrontation with Nathaniel Garrow. A bloodthirsty thug, Grolgo knew of the impending massacre of the loyalist portions of the newly turned traitor legions. He enthusiastically volunteered to deal with Garrow, who was to be on the Eisenstein. But it was here that his famed action happened, for he was killed by Garrow, caught in the act of attempting to fire the ship's complement of virus bombs onto the surface, where tens of thousands of loyal Marines now stood. But it was later, when the ships escaped the blockade and went into the warp, that they again found their Geller fields had not been fully intact. For it was then that the power of the Grandfather permeated their dome, their shields, and made of Grolgo the very first Plague Marine. He was risen to fight again. Alas, he was subsequently defeated again, but eventually raised up to a mighty demon prince by the Grandfather. But he was the first, a horror that has lasted to hurt the Imperium again and again over the millennia since. But he was the first Plague Marine. Now I hope you can see why these are intensely interesting individuals to discuss, for they and the units are not available in the 40k setting, well, not in their present form. Yet the tales of the Age of Darkness are to the grim darkness of the far future, as the Silmarillion is to the Lord of the Rings. They are the bedrock. These are the legends of the people who fight ever onwards into the 41st millennium. Their shadow is still felt today, and some of their number still stalk the void, ever testing the edges of the Imperium, ever looking for a way in. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. I hope you've enjoyed this video about some of the thrilling elements of the Galaxy in Flames expansion, and wish to thank the crew at Horus Heresy Legions for sponsoring this video. So do hit the description or pinned comment and see if you wish to try to gain any of these characters or units and use them yourself, to bring pain to the worshippers of the Corpse Guard. Or to have a good laugh and wind down, that too. So to recap, we discussed the Justarian, the Catulan Reavers, the Rampagers, the Lodges, the corruption of the Death Guard, Tybalt Mar, Kaifa Morarch, Captain Dragar, Ignatius Grolgo. All of these characters, units and elements can be seen in action in Horus Heresy Legions. Links, follow them. Do you think you can navigate the Horus Heresy? Then prove it. I would also personally like to thank HHL for inviting me to cover these subjects and give me the nudge into a potentially much larger pool of topics to cover. When I've read more, much more, so be gentle. And perhaps an old dog can learn new tricks. Just perhaps. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.